Here we are, everyone. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has arrived, closing out what is, for my money, one of the very best action franchises of all time. I've loved these movies my entire life, and I'm so sad the franchise is ending, but it's sort of crazy that this mega franchise has gone on for 30 years. And as the saying goes, don't cry that it's over, immediately pit the films against each other in a fierce ranking video while simultaneously evaluating the main characters' various hairstyles. And I know, all of these movies are so good that if ranking them were a mission, you could say it's impossible.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Still, today's mission, should you choose to accept it, ranking the Mission Impossible films and Ethan's hairstyles. First things first, if you're new here, hi, I'm Kiki. Welcome to my channel, Watcher of All Things. If you're not new here, thank God you're back. Like, subscribe, and please comment your rankings for both the movies and Ethan's hairstyles. I'm so curious what other people think because I do think every ranking list will be different. And final thing, spoilers. We're talking about all 8 movies, so obviously everything is on the table. But enough fooling around, let's get into the rankings. Starting in last place, we have the romantic, the sensual, the slow-mo thriller that is Mission Impossible 2. It came out the year I was born, 2000. It's directed by John Woo. Is it good? I don't know. Is it strange? Oh yeah. Is it one of the coolest movies ever? Absolutely. I distinctly remember having this movie on VHS after my mom taped it on TV. I thought that rock climbing sequence was the most revolutionary thing ever. Now I see how corny it is. Using Zot Mama's Aiko Aiko in a Mission Impossible movie is so out of character given what the franchise is today. But this was early days in the franchise, and I think we were at a very interesting point in Hollywood. Maybe it's not a coincidence that as a child I loved this movie and the final 2 Brosnan Bond films. 2 similarly stunt, gadget, and sex-heavy spy films with absurd premises. But I think Mission Impossible 2 is where the franchise was suffering a bit of an identity crisis. Mission Impossible 2 feels like Paramount saying we need our American Bond. Thus, we have the smirking, grinning, cheeky charmer that is Ethan Hunt in the year 2000. He's completely different from the first installment, and he would never act like this again. The movie may as well not be canon. No more flip kicks, no more slow-mo, no more over-the-top hitting on women. This movie is just a James Bond movie. Just like GoldenEye, Ethan Hunt is James Bond, Sean Ambrose is Alex Trevelyan. We even have this sexy car chase through the mountains. You get what I'm saying. Still, there is so much I actually really enjoy about this movie. Needless to say, the action and stunts are just phenomenal, particularly the Biosite showdown, which I think has some great nods to a kind of Joel Schumacher Batman vibe. It's maybe some of the best lighting and framing in the franchise, just absolutely bonkers. And those final 30 minutes feature some of the most stylish action and espionage. Some great use of doves, slow-mo flips, masks, all culminating in what I think is the coolest thing someone has ever done on film, kicking a gun up from the sand to take the villain out. Pure cinema. However, so much of this movie is just skin deep and really lives off the goodwill that we get from the action. Mission Impossible 2 always feels like a movie that knows it's just a single installment in a larger franchise, and it's sort of afraid to commit to anything, even with that very clear ending. Also, Sean Ambrose is a boring villain, Billy is extremely annoying, and I never see any chemistry between Ethan and Naya. On top of that, this movie is hella misogynistic. Anthony Hopkins saying that it'll be easy for Naya to get back with Sean because that's basically what women like to do, and Sean saying women are like monkeys because they won't let go of one branch until they have their hands on the next. What are we doing here? Yikes. Modern day Ethan Hunt would never stand for that kind of language, and I'm happy we've evolved the franchise and moved on from that. You're my least favorite child, but I still love you, Mission Impossible 2, but it's last place. In 7th place, and it pains me to say it, we have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I saw it twice on the opening weekend, and they were very drastically different experiences. My first viewing was honestly a little bit heartbreaking. If this is our very last film of the series, why are we making this huge tonal departure from the rest of the franchise? Mission Impossible doesn't do nostalgia or fan service, so why the hell do we have Jim Phelps Jr.? Why is there an hour-long clip show at the start of this movie? Why is it so sad and depressing? Even Fallout, an extremely dark movie, has so much fun stuff. But The Final Reckoning is kind of a mess. That being said, upon a rewatch, once I had accepted what this movie was, I actually had a lot more fun with it. Sure, the entity is dumb, dumb, Gabriel is dumb, Luther's death was handled terribly. They don't really mention Ilsa's death once, but at least we got that amazing submarine sequence. I love the room-to-room adventure and Ethan just being smacked around by so many different things. I hate that it leads to the most awkward CPR kiss with Grace, but the Sevastopol stuff is just so awesome. And of course, the biplane chase is terrifying. I love the cutting back and forth with Benji, Paris, and Grace trying to do surgery while also hack into this vault. Then we have the stuff with Tapisa, Dunlow, and Degas, all while Ethan is straight up doing Buster Keaton stuff. Fantastic. Look, it's a very rocky film with a very rough first half, but those final 60 minutes are just some great blockbuster action filmmaking. When you ignore that final scene in Trafalgar Square, it's a mess, but it's our mess and it's 7th place. Next up, we have Mission Impossible 3, which no, it's not my favorite, but it was such a great course correction for the franchise. No more slow-mos, no more misogyny, just a gritty, technical spy thriller focused on the personal life of Ethan Hunt. It was a long road to get to this film. There were multiple directors, writers on board, almost a completely different cast, but then we got J.J. Abrams because Tom Cruise absolutely loved Alias, which you can really see in this movie. The movie is good, but it's not great. I think Ethan being engaged, being a retired field agent, and moving toward a normal life is a really great setup for the story. Having said that, this movie sort of just wipes away Mission Impossible 2. Again, it may as well just not be canon. Doesn't really matter because I actually think there's a lot to love in this one. The opening of the film with Owen Davian torturing Julia and interrogating Ethan for the rabbit's foot is just masterclass in acting. Philip Seymour Hoffman is so good in this. Is he the best villain in the series? I don't think so, because he's really not in this movie enough for me. As for Tom Cruise, I would argue this is maybe his second best performance as Ethan Hunt. He's fragile, he's vulnerable, and it's a really interesting change up from the previous 2 films. Before, it seems like he always has a plan, but in this one, he's just super desperate. In the interrogation scene alone, before we even get the opening song and title card, it not only feels like a return to Ethan from the first film, but a really good evolution of him. And the fact that he lets Davian pull the trigger just proves how committed to the IMF he is. It also proves Luther right, who later in the film says we can't have normal relationships. It's just a very well written opening and sets up the thesis of the entire film. There's a lot of other aspects I love about this movie, like the breakout of Lindsay from Berlin, Ethan and Julia's engagement party where everyone just thinks he's this super boring guy, the entire Vatican mission, the bridge set piece, the Shanghai Rabbit's Foot heist, and of course the introduction of Benji. However, some issues I have with this movie. Probably the most boring team we would ever get in the franchise. Maggie Q and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers are absolutely wasted in this movie. The Rabbit's Foot, we all knew J.J. Abrams would leave intentionally vague. At least we finally got an answer in the final reckoning what it is. But also I get increasingly tired of J.J. Abrams' directing style as the film goes on. Still, it's a lot of fun, it has a lot of heart to it, and it really does set some great foundations for the rest of the franchise, despite another happily ever after for Ethan. Up next, I'm going with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. It's actually the very first Mission Impossible that I saw in theaters, and here's a fun story for you. I had terrible anxiety about absolutely nothing going into my teen years. This movie came out in 2011, and coincidentally from 2009 to 2012, I had daily anxiety about the end of the world. So I remember when they talked about a nuclear fallout in this film, I had a near panic attack. But anyway, Ghost Protocol is pretty rad. It's also kind of a perfect metaphor for Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible within Hollywood. Tom Cruise was in movie jail. Jeremy Renner is meant to come replace him as William Brandt. Ghost Protocol is very much a handing of the baton approach from the studio, but I'm very glad it never happened. There are moments in this film where I feel like Ethan Hunt is paradoxically taking a backseat in the story while still being the leading action guy. That's not to say we don't get any emotional character development for him, because I really enjoy the Brandt backstory that he actually knew Ethan before. Brandt has this guilt hanging over him that Ethan actually knows about, and he sort of resolves him of this. Maybe it's a hot take, but I think Jeremy Renner is so good as William Brandt. If only there were an app where I could specifically talk about my love of Jeremy Renner in the Mission Impossible movies. As always, the action is superb. I've been obsessed with the Burj Khalifa climb since I was 11, as well as the double room fake meetings, and the sandstorm chase is just so cool. It's just a really good 30-minute stretch of the movie. However, I think the third act, and honestly maybe the last hour of this movie, is kind of boring. Sure, the garage fight is kind of fun, but I don't know, it just kind of loses steam in the second half. Also, super boring villain, could not tell you his name. It starts with a K, I think. And Paula Patton as Jane Carter, I feel like they try some interesting stuff with her, but it just feels very one-dimensional. And finally, visually, I think this movie is a little bit plain. Still, it's fun, it's super solid, it was a fun progression of the series. I think the ending showing Julia is safe with Ethan watching over her is a really nice touch, and at least showing Luther win some brownie points. It's also nice that we finally got a Mission Impossible movie where the writers didn't just erase what happened in the previous films. Ghost Protocol for me is mission accomplished. Alright, my dog Gracie has once again joined me for the final 4 movies of the franchise. In 4th place, I'm going with the OG Mission Impossible from 1996. Every time I watch it, this movie grows on me. Brian De Palma directed the hell out of this thing. This movie has 2 of the most iconic scenes in all of cinema. Ethan and Kittredge in that Prague cafe, as well as the Langley heist. The cafe confrontation with Kittredge is my second favorite scene in this film because of how quickly it changes Ethan in our story. Keep in mind, the opening mission was supposed to be simple, get a photo at this event, but the whole thing is a setup to catch a mole. Kittredge sends in a second group of IMF agents and Ethan's entire team dies. Everything falls apart in the first 20 minutes of this movie. Kittredge just happens to be in the area. Then he uses not only this situation, but Ethan's family situation back home against him, just to accuse Ethan of being the mole. Insanity. I love how angry, smug, and arrogant Ethan is for the entire movie, and rightfully so, because he has something to prove. He knows he's right, and now his family is implicated. As for the Langley heist, I've seen this movie probably 100 times, but I still get nervous every time I watch it. There's so many variables that could get Ethan in trouble. The floor sensors, the temperature, the volume in the room, and obviously Dunlow walking back in. It's so tense, and shout out to Palma for giving us the split diopter shot with Krieger and the rat. One of the funniest shots in the series. One interesting thing that the first Mission Impossible does is sets up a really fascinating pattern for Ethan in the rest of the franchise. Ethan is constantly betrayed by people he trusts. He clearly sees Jim as a mentor, turns out he's the mole. And like a lot of other Mission Impossible stories, Ethan is the accused, so he has to actually do the crime to prove that it's not him. Then he even threatens to hand over whatever thing he stole to the villain. I love when movies do that, just like The Final Reckoning, just like Fallout. It's classic IMF stuff that I love to see in all of these movies. Plus it has sleight of hand magic, which I think is so cool. Maybe it's not perfect, but the very first Mission Impossible is so special to me, and that's why it's my 4th favorite. Speaking of sleight of hand magic, next up in 3rd place we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1? This movie oozes sauce. Good villain, great action, great direction, unbelievable score. I love this one. It's also kind of a miracle that this movie works at all given the massive delays from COVID and various strikes. Christopher McQuarrie is able to bring back so many classic Mission Impossible elements, almost being like fan service or even legacy characters while still managing to stand on its own as a film. You could say, unlike The Final Reckoning, bringing back Kittredge was just a really good choice for this movie. I love his dynamic with Ethan as always, using so many Dutch angles like the very first Mission Impossible movie, but evolving to have way more dynamic camera movements and taking us to new kinds of chases like a horseback sequence in the desert during a sandstorm. It's mixing stuff we've already done with new fun elements. The addition of Haley Atwell as Grace I am very mixed on, especially with where it went in The Final Reckoning. It's kind of fun having a younger, gender-swapped Ethan Hunt that can eventually join the IMF, but there's a weird sexual tension that is also there in Dead Reckoning, and it really annoys me. And it really puts Ilsa Faust on the back burner before her amazing sacrifice, which always makes me super emotional. But at the end of the day, I think Rebecca Ferguson's contract was up in this franchise, and she was super heavily involved in Dune, so maybe her character just sort of ran its course. As for the other new additions other than Grace, I think Palm Clementif as Paris is one of the very best things this franchise ever did. She's insane, and I love the joy she gets from destroying stuff. But Eze Morales, Shea Wiggum, and Greg Tarzan Davis are also great new additions that give us a really fun ensemble in this movie. Knowing what happens in The Final Reckoning, it's unfortunate where their characters go. Dead Reckoning, they're very good. And I actually think the one word I would use to describe Dead Reckoning is fun. I think it's maybe the funniest Mission Impossible movie. There's so many quips and great moments of banter in every single action sequence. It's also a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, leaning into the campiness of the Mission Impossible series. And obviously, they brought back sleight of hand magic. Of course I'm going to love this movie. I've seen this movie twice since it's released, and I have burst out in tears of joy and devastation both times. Gabriel and the Entity are a very good duo as our villains in this one. Sort of like Mission Impossible 3, Ethan's a little bit more on the back foot and unaware of what he can do. Him needing to improvise so much culminates in a daunting and ambitious mission. And saving the title card for 28 minutes into the runtime is just boss mode filmmaking from Christopher McQuarrie. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is absolutely phenomenal, and it's my 3rd favorite in the franchise. In second place, it's Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. In my head, this isn't the best movie in the franchise, but it's the best Mission Impossible movie. In the same way, I think The Dark Knight is a better film than Batman Begins, but Batman Begins is a better Batman movie. Do you follow? Rogue Nation has the stunts, it has the deception, it has the masks, it has the chases, it has the jokes. It has it all. I think Rogue Nation is when the franchise really hit that sweet spot and found its footing under Christopher McQuarrie. And in fact, McQuarrie coming on board was the very best thing to ever happen to this franchise. He understands this franchise, he understands the characters, specifically Ethan Hunt. He took Ethan Hunt from this wildcard agent that there's lots of rumors about in Ghost Protocol and turned him into this unstoppable mythological creature. Director Hunley's speech about Ethan Hunt proves McQuarrie just understands the character. Ethan Hunt is the living manifestation of destiny. There's nothing that can stop him, even a great villain like Solomon Lane.
That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT!
And obviously, the addition of Ilsa Faust is flawless. She's smart, she's very capable, and respectfully, she's very pretty. And she gives us a romantic interest for Ethan, who, unlike Julia, is very much a match within the spy world, just way more compatible with his lifestyle. Very much a Catwoman to our Batman, not to bring it back to that franchise once again. But I love how Rogue Nation sets up new characters like Ilsa or Solomon Lane that will eventually come back, while really refining our classic characters like Benji, like Luther, even William Brandt. I love how they change him again in this film. Once again, I think Jeremy Renner is fantastic in Rogue Nation, and making Benji a lot more decisive, hands-on, and focusing on his friendship with Ethan adds a lot of personal weight to the story. Again, it's McQuarrie finding his sweet spot in this franchise, making these movies about friendship, about chasing down assets, about intelligence. Rogue Nation is absolutely wonderful. That car chase turning into a bike chase right after Ethan dies is magical. And funnily enough, after seeing this movie in 2015, I only used motorcycles in GTA 5 after. I wanted to be Ethan Hunt so bad, a specialist without any equals. But anyways, Rogue Nation freaking rules, and it's my second favorite Mission Impossible movie. In first place, of course, is Mission Impossible Fallout. What I would say is the best action film of the 2010s and 2020s, maybe ever. Everything is bigger in this film. The stunts are especially bigger. The fights alone feel so heavy and so real. Watching that bathroom fight with the alleged John Locke, you really do feel every bone shatter and every punch in the face. The chases feel bigger, like Ethan and the crew escaping in 2 different cars on a motorcycle, getting hit by multiple vehicles over like 25 minutes of the runtime. It's just so awesome. And I specifically love when Ethan is going down this staircase backwards in the old BMW, and he like pulls the handbrake or something and lands backwards in the car with Solomon Lane. It's just so cool. Even the on-foot chases seem way bigger than anything we've seen in this franchise. Of course, the London chase where Tom Cruise actually broke his leg. Walker has this massive head start and he's walking the entire way. Ethan is sprinting full tilt as hard as he can, climbing buildings, jumping through windows. And I love that they used the take where Tom Cruise broke his leg. It's such a great finish to that chase where Walker pulls out the photo of Julia, and Henry Cavill just plays it so cool the entire time, which, let's talk about Henry Cavill. I think he's a bad actor, but I think he's actually passable in this. The whole John Locke, CIA, Apostles, Solomon Lane, Plutonium thing is great. It feels like there's so many different things teaming up against the IMF, and it really is our classic group trying to stop the end of the world. The stakes to Fallout just feel so massive. From the opening of the film with Ethan's nightmare, it feels like the end is really near. I mean, look, the stakes always feel high and very real in the Mission Impossible movies, but Fallout is something we've never seen before. I'd also argue this movie really does elevate the emotional stakes of the franchise. I mean, just opening the film with Ethan's ex-wife and the villain of the last movie is such a bold choice, but I really love how Fallout embraces the entire franchise and Ethan's past. This movie is about Ethan being a guardian angel. Him dreaming of Julia is literally a message from the deep, and it's him watching over her. And that final conversation in the hospital bed where he's sorry for everything that he's put her through, but then she says nothing happened because you were here, here is such a lovely wrap up for these two characters. I would somewhat agree with a lot of people who say Fallout could have been the end of the franchise and it probably would have worked, but that's a question for another day because I think Dead Reckoning is just so great. What's important for this video is Fallout is a perfect film in a pretty perfect franchise, and it's definitely my number one. All right, now let's rank some Ethan Hunt hairstyles. In 8th place, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. It's a worse version of 1 and 3 combined. It's too one length all over and really doesn't frame Ethan's face well. Then in 7th, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. There's moments where I think it looks fantastic and so textured and layered. Then there's moments where it's flat as hell and looks like a bowl cut. In 6th place, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. It's trying to recapture the magic of his hair in Mission Impossible 2, but it doesn't have the same flowiness or feminine energy. Then I'm going Mission Impossible 3. It's not bad, but it's definitely nothing special and it's kind of boring. It sort of shows where Ethan is in his life, that he is ready to be a boring guy. In 4th, I'm going Mission Impossible 1. It's short, it's angry, it's sassy, just like Ethan. I love how messy it gets. 3rd place is Mission Impossible Fallout. Great length on top, never goes out of shape during the big action set pieces and always snaps back into place. 2016 to 2020 was probably Tom Cruise's best hair era. In 2nd, I'm going Rogue Nation. I think it's the perfect happy medium. It's a perfect hybrid of Ghost Protocol and Mission Impossible 2 while not going too short as to be like Mission Impossible 3. Just like the film and the character, it really hit the sweet spot. In 1st, obviously, it's Mission Impossible 2. This is the best anyone's hair has ever looked on screen. Everyone in the world is jealous of these locks, gender aside. Ethan has had several fantastic hairstyles, but I think people undervalue how important his hairstyle is in the film. It really is a huge indication of where he is mental health wise and where he is as a character in the franchise. His hair is basically its own character. God bless Ethan Hunt's hair. I honestly can't believe it's time to say goodbye to the Mission Impossible franchise because these movies have meant so much to me. I love them all in their own unique ways and I love rewatching them back to back. The Final Reckoning is a supposed goodbye to this massive pillar of a franchise. Unless they just make another because there's a new stunt Oscar category. They've absolutely left the door open. This was such a fun video to make, and honestly 5 years from now my rankings could be completely different, but this is where it's at for the moment and I'd love to hear your rankings. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to hear more stuff like this, you can check out my weekly podcast, Watcher of All Things. It's my weekly show where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment with new episodes dropping every Monday. You can find it on all streaming platforms or right here on this wonderful YouTube channel. I just did an episode on The Final Reckoning, so go check that out. But for now, make sure you're hitting like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you know when new videos or podcast episodes drop. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
What are you waiting for? I'm jumping out a window!